What's up, Cannabis family? It's 4 o'clock in California, the COVID capital of the world. And this is Cannabis Saves the World.
But I think in terms of marijuana, and legalization, I think that should be a state issue, state by state. I think it's up to the states, yeah. I'm a states person. I think it should be up to the states, absolutely. You know, I know people that are very, very sick, and for whatever reason, the marijuana really helps them.
Good people don't smoke marijuana.
Well, that's an oldie but a goodie. But the current DOJ has been targeting cannabis businesses for audit. Gee, who would have thunk it? Meanwhile, Mitch McConnell has got a marijuana problem. His name is Charles Booker, and might just be going up against him in Kentucky. Hey, there's a new episode of Cannabis Helps Dementia, featuring Kelly Sturgeon, an awesome residential care facility in Petaluma administrator, about how cannabis helps dementia. It's awesome. Stay tuned. Oh, Acreage Holding is in the news too.
I'm all in. This is the time to go all in on cannabis.
Yeah, it sure
I am
is.
John.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. This is Cannabis Saves the World. Everybody's jumping in. This is the show where we get together, talk about all the cannabis news, cannabis medicine, and feature our new podcast that we do every week that launches on Friday, Cannabis Helps Dementia. And of course, when I say we, I mean Coach Chela.
Hello.
And I think is your mic on?
Oh, God.
I don't think it is. I see blinking lights over here.
Now it's on.
Awesome.
Cool.
Are you with us, Jenna?
Yes.
Oh, there you are.
Hello. Hi, Rose. Rose is on Facebook with us.
Oh, that's right. We are multi-streaming, folks. We are multi-streaming on, of course, YouTube, Facebook, Periscope, D-Live for you decentralized crowd. MD and Niles also jumping in. Brian Arbor first in today. Thank you, Brian, for all of your support. Keeping my son this week, so no Sunday road trip for me. It's Cannabis Saves the World for me. And Brian, were you listening in on our earlier conversation? I don't think I was streaming during the green room, but we are definitely going to be going on a road trip
We are.
coming up here in July because guess what? Los Angeles is a coronavirus hotspot.
That's not really why we're going.
It is not why we're going. Sorry for bursting your ears on that overmodulation. I will adjust. It's not why we're going. It's a convenient precursor or adjunct to the road trip we are planning. Yes.
True story. True story. It might be hard to get people to let us stay with them on the way up.
Right. Waiting for Jilly Love to jump into the chat.
Yes, let's wait for Jilly Love.
With that in mind, that discussion.
We could camp.
Yes, that is on the
Which is so
table as
weird.
well.
Did that come out of my mouth?
I know.
Was that me?
I think last week was our happy anniversary, babe.
Happy anniversary,
celebrating
babe.
our 27 years together today,
Dude, you guys,
this week.
27 years. What? That's just wild.
Yeah. So, and one of the very first things we did was go on a camping trip.
We did. And the first thing I said was, is there a bathroom?
Right.
A real bathroom. So that's my version of camping. There has to be a bathroom. Real bathroom.
Oh wow! I think I worked out the video lag problem, and now there's lag coming through on the camera. I think.
Totally.
It's laggy, right?
It looks weird and choppy.
Yeah, shoots. Wonder what's going on.
No experiment is bad.
Listen,
it's okay.
I fix one.
You plug one hole and another hole bursts open.
And another hole bursts open.
Brian Arbor's going camping on the 4th. Hi, Cannabis Sativa. Hi, Vegan Metro. MDN Niles and Brian Arbor. Hey, everybody. It's nice to see you all.
Yes, I literally lost your camera completely.
That's okay. It's better that way. It's better to just listen.
I'm going to try to get it back here. Oh, no. Well, we might have to go to video sooner rather than expected.
That's cool.
Oh, wait, there you go. I think I got you back. I did. I don't know if it's still lagging or not.
No experiment's bad. I definitely see a black screen.
Okay.
Oh, there. Hi, you're back.
Okay, I think the lag is fixed itself. I'm going to cross my fingers. Just a small chop. Yes, Brian, thank you. Yes, this is a, and we're going and imagine what it's going to be like on the road. I'm sure it's going to be so much better. But we're super excited actually to go visiting some family, some friends, new friends, old friends, not old, old OG friends, ocean grown, actually. So we're going to. Have you talked about our final destination for this road trip?
No. So this road trip, we're going to be going up the California coast, I believe. Seems like a reasonable thing to do. We're going to definitely see my sister on this road trip. Her birthday is mid-July, so we're going to celebrate with her at some point there. We're gonna see some friends in Humboldt, some friends we've met through the show. Be nice to connect with them, maybe spend the night. And then our ultimate destination is to Gold Beach, Oregon.
What?
Gold Beach, Oregon is 3 hours from Humboldt and any other place.
And anywhere else in the world.
So Gold Beach, a friend of ours, a friend of the show actually, you guys may have remembered, we talk about Angie when she comes on sometimes in the chat. So our friend Angie bought a property up there and is converting it to a vegan sanctuary, production hub, bed and breakfast kind of deal. And we're going to go spend a little time there ourselves. Another friend of hers was there recently and made basically a promotional video.
I'm playing it now as we speak, actually.
And okay, cool, awesome.
So
you're watching it.
This is going to be like a preview of what we're going to be doing,
right?
In the second half of our trip, our road trip, our exploratory scouting trip. That's going to be our view right there, guys. That's what we're going for.
Yeah.
So this is the property, and we're going to go up there, and there's no COVID cases in Gold Beach.
Yeah, I think there have been 5 in the county,
right?
Since the beginning of all this.
So, and that, as I say, that's just a secondary reason for getting out of Dodge. But we are, we've been wanting to do this. We've been wanting to go up and visit our good friend and someone who was really instrumental in caring for part of Chela's mom's care team.
Absolutely, and she really helped us
and became a really great friend.
Absolutely. She turned us on to coconut oil magic. And
that's right. It was Angie that turned us on to coconut oil.
She did. She was the one who turned us on to coconut oil magic and also was incredibly supportive on the cannabis medicine exploration.
Chela is frozen. Hang on.
Cool. Happy Lux. Hi, Happy Lux.
Jiminy Crickets.
Oh, thanks, Brian Arbor. Happy anniversary, babe, from Brian Arbor.
Oh, thank you.
And a super chat.
Oh, wow. Thanks,
Brian.
Buddy.
You're too kind.
It must be, you know what? Mercury is in retrograde, isn't it?
Mercury is totally in retrograde. Hey, at least I look cute in the freeze.
It's a good shot, right? It's an excellent shot. I'm desperately trying to get you back up.
That's okay. You don't have to.
Oh, you know what I can do while we do this? We can continue to watch that awesome little video that's going on. I'll back it up a little bit. You can see a little bit more about Gold Beach as I try to get Chela's picture back up. Yeah, so
I can talk over it.
Talk over it. Talk a little more.
No problem. So Gold Beach, Oregon is in the middle of nowhere, but this is what it is. I mean, the ocean, the trees, the fresh air. It looks really magical. The thing is that it's really far away from anywhere, and I'm glad we're going to be going up during the season, as it were, to see what sort of natural tourist traffic is the clientele of the area. Because to have a successful business in that area, you got to cater to the people who are there. So what do they need? What do they want? What's up with them? And or a successful internet business that capitalizes on your space there, I guess. You know? Those trees. Oh my God, I'm so excited
Yeah,
about the hiking.
Chela has had a thing, a desire to be around trees.
I have a
for
tree thing.
A number of
Yeah, I have a tree
number of
thing.
years.
Some people have an ocean thing. Some people have a water thing. I'm a tree person. I love, love, love me some trees. I mean, I don't have a problem with the ocean. The ocean's okay. There's nothing wrong with the ocean. I almost drowned, but that's okay. The ocean is still awesome.
Haven't been in the ocean since.
Pretty much. Oh, Cannabis Sativa. Thank you, buddy. Thank you so much. We got a little super chat. I love it. This is great. We're professionals.
Yeah, maybe we can get some
Whoop,
professional.
whoop.
Maybe we can get some professional equipment.
Right on. Well, Mercury is in retrograde. I'm not worried about it.
What I just did was, look at that. I unplugged it and plugged it back in, and look what happens when you unplug something and plug it back in. It starts to work. It's like I learned that on South Park in an episode. Thank you guys so much. Cannabis Sativa, welcome to the show. Thank you so much. Brian Arbor, mahalo for the super chat, you guys. 420 Fred is in the house, and Blasi jumping in. Streamlabs, thank you for noticing that. Streamlabs. Happy Lux. Welcome to the show. Doing my one-man banding. Here we are. That was a little peek of where we're going to be destined to visit coming up in the coming weeks.
Yes.
Which is super exciting. We've been looking forward to doing it, and we're going to make some stops along the way. Whoever will have us, with masks. Complete with masks.
But I think it might be
and
wise
doggy.
to get a tent.
Jackpot is coming with us.
Yes, Jackpot's coming with us on this drive.
Yep.
And Oscar will be staying at a friend's house where he's going to be enjoying the lap of dog enjoyment. There are other dogs there, and he's just a different, happy dog.
He's been there. He's welcome there, and he's gonna have a good old time. He's not a travel dog. Oscar is not a travel dog. He's barely a sit-at-home dog.
There's Jilly Love.
He has a little aggression problem, but we're gonna try to get another pack. See if another pack will help him with his aggression problem while we go on vacation. Yes, vacation, a working vacation, really exploratory. We're going on a scout.
Yes,
we're going on a scout.
It's a scout. Maybe it's a pilot episode.
Yes.
Of a new show.
Yes.
What were you exploring? What was the name? Checking out.
Checking out in the new reality.
Checking out, a new reality show.
Checking out the new reality.
What do you think?
Something like that.
Checking out a new reality show.
Literally, ever since we've doing Reefer Revolution and doing the news show and doing the podcast, we've often talked about taking the show on the road and going. So we're, we are strong creators. So I think the world is providing an opportunity to do that. And listen, we all need to reinvent ourselves under this new reality, right? I guess. So we're going to do some reinventing and do some exploring and visiting some friends and family and loved ones and who need help and assistance and we all have to stay apart but come together and Hollywood ain't coming back anytime soon.
No, you guys, it's fucking
and
crazy.
Really, do we want to be involved in what's coming back?
No,
is really the question.
Listen, don't tell anybody. But this is some crazy shit. What they're thinking about doing, it's insane. So
it's a VSMR. Chela's doing a little VSMR.
I'm not, but I don't want my IATSE friends to hear me.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they'll never hear you now. We're going live on our Facebook pages.
Nobody
will hear you.
Not mine. And my IATSE friends are not on your page.
Vegan Metro. Hello, Vegan Metro. I didn't say hello today. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah. Oh, yay. Jilly Love is welcoming us. Thank you, Jilly Love.
Huzzah.
Thank you. We need one night in Humble, and that would be awesome. Thank you very much.
And
so cool.
Yeah, because it's a long ass drive to Gold Bend, Oregon, or rather Gold Beach. This is not
really long drive. It says only 12 hours, but our friend Angie says, it's a beautiful drive, so you want to stop and get scenic and all that good stuff. So
it's not that it's it's actually Humboldt is very close to Gold Beach, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be a pretty regular trip for us, I think. If things change or like I say, we're exploring, guys. We're exploring what our possibilities are. The one thing for sure is we will continue to make sure we're in a place where we can do the show.
Yes.
And have access to the internet, so
we
we
have
can put up
already crossed one of the places off the list.
we can produce our podcast and bring you guys the cannabis news and our adventures. It's going to be just a whole new show of our adventures on the road.
Yes. Another show. I like
another
how we
show.
compartmentalize.
Yeah, mix it up.
Yeah.
We've done it before. We've gone on trips and taken everybody on. It's some of our greatest moments have come on the hood of our car. Some of our funniest moments, anyway.
Oh
hey,
my gosh, Mary Kellerman. Hi.
Mary Kellerman.
Wow, awesome. And
Hello.
Thank you for the well wishes.
And cousin Doug, if you're listening and watching on YouTube, welcome to the show. If you want to jump in the chat and say something, jump on in.
Yeah,
Of course,
I should go back there and see if
Doug Goodwin, the composer and vocals on our theme song for Cannabis Helps Dementia podcast, which you hear every week. I think he's joining us on the YouTube broadcast today. So welcome to the show, cousin Doug, in our ever-changing format here on Cannabis Saves the World, formerly Reefer Revolution Live, also including Cannabis Helps Dementia podcast.
And former, what was the first thing?
And DC 420 LA.
Yes, and the first one before that. The Bernie thing. Bernie TV.
Feel the Burn TV.
Yes.
So it's been a constant
evolution. Yes, totally.
Of our priorities and views, always with the cannabis bent.
Yeah.
And we are going to get into that new episode of the podcast after the news, at the news headlines. We're going to do news headlines, and then we're going to get into the latest episode of the Cannabis Helps Dementia podcast featuring Kelly Sturgeon, who is the owner and operator, administrator of two wonderful residential care facilities in Petaluma, California, near the Emerald Triangle of the there's a, it's not actually part of the Emerald Triangle, I don't think. Is Petaluma in the triangle?
No, I don't
it's
think
not.
so.
But it's on sort of the periphery, if you will, and is embracing one of the zones in California that is embracing cannabis medicine, particularly in residential care, which has always been our focus. And it's an awesome interview.
The zone is, but let's time out. I want to be clear.
Sure.
Petaluma was not embracing cannabis. No. They were a dry county.
That's right. There are many dry counties here in California. 80% of the state, it's cannabis is basically illegal. So there are still, as we, Los Angeles not being one of them, but you can't find any residential care facilities down here in Southern California that are doing some of the work that's going on up in Petaluma and other places like Santa Rosa with Primrose, which was episode 6, I think, of Cannabis Helps Dementia.
Yeah.
So super cool. Yeah, that's going to be coming up at about 4:30. We're going to start that episode.
Hey, maybe we'll be able to start a home like that in a couple of years after the foreclosure crisis.
Yeah, you never know. I'm telling you, listen, out of chaos comes opportunity.
That's
We're staying nimble. You got to stay nimble in these times.
Yes,
harder, easier for others. Some not for others, of course.
Julie Love is commenting because she lives up there.
Yes.
Petaluma is last of the holdouts. Good old boys.
Ah, yes, indeed.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be very exciting. We're always excited to meet folks who will listen to the show or join us. We met
CJ Apo.
CJ Apo came out from Chicago a couple years ago. Holy Cannabis Oil. We met last year at Emerald Cup, which I just don't know if that's happening this year. We'll see.
I don't think so.
We'll see what's going on this year. Everything's sort of being delayed. Oh, listen, pick first zucchini today. Bread's just done. It's funny you should say that. The folks that are landlords, the folks that own the property here, they planted a farm. It was like Insta Farm.
Smoke weed every day.
Oh, hey, it's time. It's 4:20, everybody. Smoke them if you got them. Spark up. It's that time on the Pacific Coast. 4:20. That's also tells us it's time for giant zucchinis. No, I was just going to say a giant zucchini was harvested from our Insta Farm out in front of our house here. Surprisingly, came out of the woods, came out of the leaves like a 2-foot long zucchini. So it is time indeed. Cannabis Sativa says, I have a grand total of 2 adult use stores within 25 miles. Oh, I think he just retracted that. He's going to put it in again, though.
It was.
What did it say?
only 3. He basically only has 3 stores within a 25-minute drive of his place. There you go. Grand total of 2 adult-use stores and a 25-minute one-way drive in my country. Must be county. 3 if you count 1 25 minutes in a neighboring county. Yeah.
Well, I tell you,
State Raider.
Weed for Warriors had a post just today, I think, about how, Prop 64 just devastated medical access, and it's very disheartening what these fake legalization efforts are going on. Headed by John Boehner and company. Weed haters and marijuana just battled war on drug supporters and for their entire careers, and now have found a way to make money. And the states are embracing it with raising taxes. Cannabis taxes are going to save the economies out of COVID. Everybody's talking about that. All the states are. The cannabis taxes have gone up here in California. Prop 64 and legalization efforts around the country have done nothing but hinder access for real patients needing medicine. Price has gone up, access has gone down, and patients are suffering. And so it's very hard to when we find places that are using it and do have access and are making it available, and a lot of which has to do with, income. Not if you're poor, your access to cannabis is limited. If you're a person of color, your access to cannabis is limited, and you get persecuted for your use.
I think that's why the traditional market is still thriving in California, because patients haven't gone anywhere.
That's right. Certainly one of the
Patients
reasons.
are still in California, and they're probably still using a lot of the caregivers that they used to have, who can't get a license because the licensing is corrupt.
That's right. Well, let's get into some news before then we can get into the podcast. I wanted to talk about the headlines that we promoted. So let's talk about them real quickly. I got a little video to go along with them. In Marijuana Business Daily, DOJ whistleblower, Attorney General bars treatment of cannabis industry tantamount to harassment. We've talked about the secret committee, Trump is all like we play in the open, or we used to. He was all, medical. I know some people who use cannabis. I'm all for the medical cannabis. He told Cory Gardner that he was going to be for the States Act. He's a states guy, states should legalize it. Well, he's secretly working against it, behind the scenes in the White House. And it comes out that, it looks like they were basically targeting, quote, harassing cannabis businesses. And what did that drive MedMen out? And MedMen had a lot of problems. But let's hear what this whistleblower had to say in front of Congress, and then we'll come back on the other end and talk about it.
I like it when you do that, because then I didn't have to study the day before.
What's that? Play the video?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Those are the best book clubs, when you can read a chapter and then discuss.
Exactly. Okay, it's just getting through the ad. Okay, here we go. Oops, I should unmute it as well. Shoot, was that muted before?
I heard it in my ear.
I know, but they didn't hear it.
Oh, sorry, guys.
I think our open music was muted too.
Hey, did you know it's Mercury in retrograde?
Hey, it's I don't know if it's you or me, but Mercury seems always to be in retrograde all the time.
It's just,
or maybe it's just convenient when things are going wrong. Technically, that's when it happens.
Long.
Maybe it's just proving it.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Jordan, and members of the committee.
I think it's
My
in
name
sync.
is John Elias, and I am a career attorney with the Department of Justice. I joined the department in 2006, and over the past 14 years, I have served under 6 attorneys general and 3 presidents. I've spent my entire legal career at the department. Although I am a current department attorney, my testimony is personal and does not represent the views of the department. Throughout my career in federal service, I have been taught to do the right thing for the right reasons in the right way. That is why, earlier this year, I asked the DOJ Inspector General to examine whether multiple antitrust investigations launched under Attorney General Barr were abuses of authority or other misconduct. The first matter that I referred to the IG concerned 10 investigations that the Antitrust Division launched into merger activity in the marijuana or cannabis industry. These mergers were not even close to meeting established criteria for these kinds of investigations. And yet, these cannabis investigations accounted for a full 29% of the division's full review investigations last fiscal year. For context, these kinds of investigations are rare. On average, only 1% to 2% of the thousands of transactions that come before the division each year get a full review. In the first of the cannabis investigations, the merger of MedMen and PharmaCann, career attorneys examined the proposed deal and determined that the transaction called for no further antitrust review. Staff reached this conclusion using the criteria under the horizontal merger guidelines that have guided the division for decades. However, on March 5th, 2019, Attorney General Barr called the Antitrust Division leadership to his office and ordered the division to proceed with a full investigation. The division staff complied, issuing burdensome 15-page subpoenas that compelled production of 1.3 million documents from 40 personnel, all at great expense to the companies. Although the division ultimately found no evidence of antitrust problems, the companies abandoned the merger, citing delays in regulatory approval. The Antitrust Division went on to conduct similar investigations of 9 other mergers in the cannabis industry. Division staff continued to document at the outset the lack of any bona fide antitrust issues. In some cases, the companies operated in completely different geographies and did not compete at all. Nonetheless, the division continued to issue subpoenas and compel productions of millions of documents from these businesses. At one point, the office handling agriculture became so overwhelmed with cannabis investigations that it had to pull in attorneys from the telecommunications, media, and technology offices. In response to staff concerns about these investigations, the head of the Antitrust Division, Assistant Attorney General Del Rahim, acknowledged at an all-staff meeting that the cannabis industry is, quote, unpopular on the 5th floor, unquote, referring to AG Barr's offices at DOJ headquarters. But personal dislike of an industry is not a valid basis upon which to ground an antitrust investigation. Okay.
In your written testimony, you contended that mergers with cannabis industries were, quote, unlikely to raise significant competitive concerns. You further stated that a few of the documents produced in response to the subpoenas were ever reviewed by Antitrust Division staff. You essentially said that the second requests were made for purposes of burdening these companies. So you filed, as you stated earlier, a DOJ complaint about this with the Inspector General. Is that correct, yes or no?
Yes.
The letter of the Office of Professional Responsibility, the Office of Professional Responsibility indicated that they conducted a thorough review of your claims and concluded they were without merit. Is that not true?
So they concluded that even if the investigations were motivated by animosity, that would still comply with the DOJ.
So my answer to my question is yes. You wrote in your written testimony that the cannabis industry, you instructed the staff, quote, were not instructed to conduct interviews of customers. And that marijuana is not a Schedule I drug, correct? Is it a Schedule I or not?
I'm not sure exactly which schedule it's on, but it's on one of them, yes.
You were part of an antitrust in marijuana and didn't know how it was scheduled? And then we've asked to be part of this committee. Mr. Elias, the credibility of this is going downhill quickly here.
Mr. Elias, you've testified as to cases that Justice and Antitrust took up concerning areas that otherwise you didn't think, or the Justice Department superiors didn't think were worthy of antitrust investigations. One was cannabis.
That's correct.
Was that cost the cannabis folks a lot of money?
Absolutely. These subpoenas that get issued that require production of millions of documents is very burdensome.
So it was harassment by Bill Barr of an industry he didn't like. Is that right?
I think that's a fair way to characterize it, yes.
And ironically, that just like Judge Rayo, it all comes back to one place. Barr doesn't like marijuana. Marijuana is 7 times more likely to be enforced against young African Americans, breeding discontent with police and breeding interactions with police. And Barr doesn't care about that type of stuff because he doesn't like marijuana, so that's okay. That's one of the breeding grounds of distrust of African Americans and police and African American contact and problems. Great, very unfortunate.
Unfortunate. Yeah, that's an interesting term.
Very unfortunate.
Very unfortunate. Mr. Cohen, Mr. Collins, Mr. Cohen. Yes, and doesn't know what schedule it's on. I actually kind of agree with that. If you don't know what schedule cannabis is on, you really shouldn't be arguing, putting cannabis in your argument about anything if you don't know the facts. And it's true.
Even if he was trying to say that it's antitrust.
Right, and it's true that in Politico, DOJ document defends scrutiny of marijuana mergers. Misconduct office found antitrust prosecutions violated no rules by undertaking review at the request of the Attorney General. So yeah, that's the game. I know it's like the police. The police are doing their job. That's why they don't get fired or prosecuted. So this is the game.
They're doing what we asked them to do.
That's
like
right.
Good Nazis.
Now, are they saying this is a Republican-private position? Well, this apparently is what's going on. Telling Cory Gardner that he's pro States Act. But it turns out the DOJ has been targeting or allegedly targeting. That's a good chunk of that budget to be going after cannabis business. I think there's a lot of other antitrust investigations that could be going forward, despite that. Meanwhile, Mitch McConnell has a marijuana problem, and it's not what you think it is.
It's a big problem.
He doesn't smoke marijuana. Maybe he should, but his marijuana problem is his challenger, who is now leading, by the way, by just 2 percentage points. We're talking about
the good challenger.
The good challenger. That's right. Let's clarify that. Representative Charles Booker is going up against Amy McGrath in the Kentucky Democratic primary.
And.
Charles Booker has been outspoken, not only with defunding the police, which was her big downfall, according to some analysts, when she did not support essentially the protests that were going on, or even bother to visit one. Charles Booker came out and stood with the protesters.
She was safely isolating at home, and listen, okay.
She was following the status quo.
If you've got, maybe they have health issues at home, and that's fine. But I have repeatedly asked about her stance on cannabis. Repeatedly looked for it on her website.
You have.
And she has consistently ignored my questions. Like on Facebook, when they ask you all the things, I'll ask the question and she'll respond to the person above me, respond to the person below me, and completely ignore my question. So I'm sorry, dude. This is a very important topic of our time, and you have to be comfortable talking about it no matter what way you feel about it, pro or con. You can't just duck the question. I'm going to play his soundbite real quick, but he also tweeted out earlier last year, in April, he filed legislation. He says, this session I filed legislation to decriminalize marijuana possession. It is past time that we finally allowed families and communities to heal, legalize it, commute sentences, expunge records, provide support for marginalized communities to benefit from the new economy on 420 Day last year. So he's been a longtime supporter of cannabis and decriminalization. Let's hear what he has to say about that. Oops, hang on. I have to unmute Facebook. Try that again.
We deserve a commonwealth where we don't criminalize a plant, where we don't throw people away that are suffering from pain and trauma, where we are not dealing with one of the highest incarceration rates in the planet because we criminalize poverty. We can break these chains, and we got to do it.
So there's Mitch McConnell's marijuana problem, is somebody who actually supports decriminalizing and legalizing cannabis in Kentucky and supports defunding the police. So, and is supporting these protests that are continuing to go on every night somewhere. Just when you think they're going to die down, somebody in law enforcement kills somebody, shoots them in the back, or otherwise takes another person of color down, it's like Pavlov's dog. I don't know how to, it's just, they just can't help themselves.
It's weird.
It's weird, right?
Like I would imagine that the person leading the cops at their meeting in the morning says, "Listen, please don't kill anyone today, but stay safe out there.
Don't shoot him in the back." How about that one? How about just that? When did that become a trend? You know, not even in the movies did they do that. So yeah, I mean, we have a race, and he's as of right now. I think the last I read, he was she was up by 8 points on the 24th, and I think today, according to the New York Times, the tracker, where is it? Here it is. He is up by 2 points. Charles Booker, the cannabis-friendly, protest-friendly, progressive, a real progressive. Elliot Engel lost in New York to Bowman. So we have real progressives, taking over from the status quo. And it looks like this race, it's pretty tight down there in Kentucky. But if Booker goes up against McConnell, it's going to be a very interesting race. There are those that are saying there's no way anybody like that is going to be able to beat McConnell. But nobody thought AOC was going to win. Nobody thought Bowman was going to beat, or Engel was going to be dethroned in this one. So I think that's all bets are off in this pandemic, in this environment of
New reality
of cannabis being essential, cannabis legalization. The petitions are going forward. Montana is going to be on the ballot in November. Cannabis 2020. It's cannabis voters are out there, and it gets young people to the polls. You want an issue that gets young people to the polls? It was proven in Michigan. More people came out to vote for legalizing cannabis in Michigan than voted for any other politician on the ballot. So this is a winning issue. Charles Booker is on the right side, and I think he could beat Mitch McConnell in an upset if he were to win this primary, if he pulls it out. Official results coming, in a week probably. Might even be, who knows, might even be a recount, considering how close this is.
I would imagine that the neo-libs would ask for a recount, but boy, is that going to look bad on them.
That is pretty tight. 2 points.
It's going to look really bad on them if they do that. It'll look very Karen-y. Very Karen-y.
So those are our headlines for this week. We're going to get into some of the other news brief at the end of the show, but we're going to get into our next episode, our latest episode of Cannabis Helps Dementia. Folks, you can find that show, that podcast, that new and exciting podcast happening that comes out every Friday morning over on anchor.fm/Cannabis Helps Dementia.
So far, yes, every Friday morning.
So far, we've done it every Friday morning.
When we go on our trip, it may not happen.
Listen, we are trying to book guests and get some recorded, so we're all scheduled and there's no interruption. Who knows? We might even do a live podcast recording while we're on the road. Who knows? But we've got a live one came up on Friday, and we've got another one coming up on this Friday, which is super exciting. We'll talk about that after we play this one. But this week's was really good. My sister, our super fan, my nurse sister in Colorado, is another big. She loved this week's episode. And we, of course, Cannabis Helps Dementia is our podcast. If you've been followers of this show for any of the years that we've been doing it, a couple of years now, our focus has been on seniors, cannabis medicine for seniors. And, of course, our journey with Alzheimer's with Chela's mom, a 10-year journey finding that cannabis medicine was really the only thing that helped. So we felt like we had to start the podcast. And we are up to episode 11. This is episode 11 in the podcast. You can find that podcast once again over on anchor.fm/Cannabis Helps Dementia. From there, you can launch to the other podcast services. You can listen on iTunes, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your iPod or your podcasts. Look for Cannabis Helps Dementia, and I bet it's there. If it's not, we'll get it there. But you can always listen right there on Anchor FM, who sponsors our show. And which is quite nice. Now, you're going to listen to that podcast right now, folks.
Here we go.
Check out the latest episode of Cannabis Helps Dementia, featuring Kelly Sturgeon and the music of Doug Goodwin.
Why don't you get wise, get up and get out, get rid of that frown that's been dragging you down, and get up in the air, just pretend that you can fly. You'll never know if you can till you try.
Hi, and welcome to Cannabis Helps Dementia. I'm Chela.
I'm Dave. And right up front, we'd like to say that we're not doctors or medical professionals, and nothing you hear in this podcast should be considered medical advice.
Right.
We're not experts, but throughout this podcast series, you'll hear from doctors, nurses, research scientists, administrators, other caregivers, and people living with dementia about how cannabis helps.
Like it did for our family.
That's right.
After my mom was diagnosed with dementia, we were thrust into family caregiving and became fierce advocates for people living with dementia,
Including their access to cannabis medicine. In this episode, we're talking with Kelly Sturgeon, who is the creator and administrator of Creekside Cottage and Creekside Place Assisted Living Homes in Petaluma, California.
And she's also the president and manager of Community Caregivers of Sonoma.
Kelly has created a high standard of care in a home environment that applies 20 years of experience as an administrator, educator, and expert in the elder care field.
She provides exceptional care through tailored caregiving, meaningful activities, home-cooked meals using local organic ingredients, and using Tepa Snow's positive approach to care.
Kelly is also an advocate for using cannabis for people living with dementia.
Kelly Sturgeon, thank you for joining us and for being on the leading edge of dementia care.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Kelly, your background seems very structured and traditional. How did you become an advocate to incorporate cannabis into your care homes?
Well, in our field, we're presented with some challenges because there are behaviors associated sometimes with people living with dementia that include anxiety, restlessness, sleeplessness, because of the way that Alzheimer's or vascular dementia is changing the brain and affecting their lives. And so we're seeking to reduce suffering and to apply compassion in our work so that our residents are comfortable and living with the highest quality of life possible as we go through this journey with them. And so we discovered the effectiveness of medical cannabis after working with Dr. Jeffrey Hergenrather. And I attended a conference that was sponsored in Sonoma County, sponsored partly by St. Joseph's Health and St. Joseph's Hospice. And I was very, very skeptical going in. I thought, I need to attend this. I want to understand, because the more tools we have available to us to help our residents, the better quality of life that they will have. And I think because of the way Dr. Hergenrather presented his material and the studies that back up the effectiveness of medical cannabis for pain, for mood disorders like depression and anxiety, for sleeplessness at night, among many other things, I didn't realize that it could impact digestion and the GI tract. A lot of elderly residents have issues with GI, and it's a part of aging. Sometimes it's a part of the body slowing down, and so there can be a lot of issues with how people absorb nutrition. And so I didn't realize so many benefits that medical cannabis can have. I didn't know we had a cannabinoid system in our bodies. And
don't worry, most doctors don't know either.
I was so surprised. So that's where it began. It began with Dr. Hergenrather and a group of advocates in our region who were willing to put this conference together. That was a couple of years ago.
Awesome. It sounds like you're talking about the Medical Cannabis Conference. We went to the 2.0 where Dr. Hergenrather gave a wonderful talk, and it was co-sponsored by St. Joseph's Hospice as well.
Must have been number one that
yeah,
you saw.
The first one.
Yeah.
Oh,
you were
okay.
skeptical.
I was skeptical because I hadn't seen studies. I knew that we we needed to find alternatives to the medications often prescribed because of the side effects that we've seen with those medications. So we have some residents we've experienced, we've had very positive experiences with psychotropic medications that have been very effective in certain cases, and in other cases where they were not effective and they had very negative side effects. And so then you have to ask, well, what are the alternatives that can help this person who clearly has anxiety, is experiencing quite a bit of confusion, and you're witnessing suffering that you want to help relieve. And so I think that's what led me to go to this conference and find out, is this a good alternative that we can work with Dr. Hergenrather, also Dr. Grobe, who's another physician in the region. And so our journey began, and
Awesome.
we've seen very positive results.
So how and why do you see cannabis helping people living with dementia?
Well, I'll start with sleeplessness. And it's a common problem for people with Alzheimer's because as we were talking earlier, the brain is changing, and it's not just affecting the memory center, it's affecting many different parts of the brain. And some people experience problems with sleep. We all know that if you don't get a good night's sleep, it's hard to function. And that's for those of us with normal brains. So people with Alzheimer's, they're working with a smaller brain capacity, smaller brain function. And on top of it, to try and function in a world that's confusing to them without getting good quality sleep, that's a lot for them to have to deal with. And so sleeplessness is an important problem to address for people living with dementia. And it's been very effective in helping with sleep at night. Anxiety is another area that we see, people living with this disease exhibiting signs of anxiety. And that can be in many ways that they exhibit anxiety that we report to their primary care doctors, and that we can work with Dr. Hergenrather or another physician in the field for those who experience anxiety or depression that we see associated with Alzheimer's. And we've seen good effect on these mood disorders.
What about pain? Have you noticed anything with how cannabis relieves pain in people living with dementia?
I'm so glad you asked that. It's such an important part of our work is to observe for signs of pain and report signs of pain. It can be tricky. Sometimes we feel like, okay, we have to do a little detective work.
Yeah.
Pain can be exhibited or expressed in a lot of different ways. Agitation is one of the primary ways that pain is expressed.
Yes.
There was a study done, now it's probably been over 20 years ago, and I apologize, I can't remember the name of the study.
We'll find it.
It's well known.
And we'll put it in the description.
Okay. And what they looked at is treatment for pain in hospitals post-hip surgery for people with dementia versus treatment with psychotropic medications for agitation. And what they found in the study is that if you have dementia and you have hip surgery, you are more likely to be treated with psychotropic medications for agitation post-surgery than you will be treated for pain.
Right.
So we know that agitation is a sign of illness. It's a sign of pain. It's very important that we report that to primary care doctors. And if we're working with, if we're lucky to work with somebody like Dr. Hergenrather or Dr. Grobe, we can report those signs of pain, one of which is agitation, and try to get that resolved with medical cannabis. And there's a lot of different products out there that can help with this. There are topicals, there are tinctures, and different ratios of CBD to THC, depending on the type of pain that's being exhibited. And so I think we need more research on this, and it's such a huge need in our field is to treat pain. And there's so many different kinds of pain too. When you think about, there's neurological pain, there's muscular pain, there's psychic pain, and it's very real. And we want to address pain in all of its different forms for people living with this disease.
Can you think of one or two examples that really stuck out in your mind, maybe early on when you started to incorporate cannabis, of patients that really you went, wow, this is really benefiting? And what kind of dosing do you find? You say you're able to use in certain instances rubs for pain, topicals. What are the typical types of products you use, and what kind of a dosing do you usually find in some of these patients?
It's a great question. Thankfully now the dosing is much more reliable. It's clearer in the production of the medical cannabis products, so that because we have to maintain our compliance with regulations for the state of California in terms of how medical cannabis is administered, and follow those regulations in our field, which is important. So thankfully it's really improved. Edibles can sometimes not be reliable in terms of knowing how much accurately, how many milligrams somebody is getting, but they're getting more and more specific about the dosage, and it's much more reliable, thankfully, because often people with dementia are unable in the later stages to take a pill and swallow it.
Yeah.
And so an edible form is going to be needed, whether it's a tincture or a gummy. The topical products that are out there have been very, very effective. We use one that is a combination of CBD and arnica and mint for arthritis pain. Very effective. And arthritis pain can become disabling for people in their as they age if they have arthritis. And think about arthritis of the back or of the neck, which is something that we see quite a bit in our population. Very, very effective and immediate relief that that the product we're currently using.
And that's a CBD, probably a full spectrum CBD, not very high THC, or if anything, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
The product we're using right now doesn't have THC. It's a CBD, arnica, and mint blend.
That's pretty amazing.
It is. So we've used different topicals. It depends on what the physician orders that have been, really effective. And so you're reducing the need for residents to use more traditional pain medications that can have all kinds of issues, especially if they would need to take it frequently, that can have a negative impact on the GI tract. And perhaps even reduce the need for those kinds of pain medications. And we've seen with opioids across the country, the crisis that's happened with opioids for pain management. And while we know our population is under-medicated for pain, it's a given. We know that they're under-medicated. And with the opioid crisis, it's making it more difficult to get pain treated sometimes because of the different regulations and requirements that doctors have to follow. Definitely. And so medical cannabis is a way to effectively treat pain, where we can report signs of pain to the physician and have medical cannabis be a very good alternative to opioids.
And I think that connection between agitation and pain is so important and no one makes that connection really, because, we've seen in our journey in learning with TIPA and that study in particular, we know that study you speak of, an example of the woman who was pulling her hair out, behavior, could not express her pain. And it was a hip pain due to a broken hip that they had not addressed. And once they addressed the pain, that agitation went away, that behavior went away. And then what they do is, like you say, they throw them on psychotropics because they think that's it's a behavior. It's an agitated behavior. It doesn't have anything to do with pain. So that connection is so huge.
Yeah,
that
and
they made that.
the opioids are not allowed to be prescribed to a lot of older people and a lot of people with dementia. We had that problem with our loved one, Evelyn, who was having a serious pain issue, and doctor would only give her Tylenol, and that wasn't doing it.
Because there's nothing really else. I mean, that's it. You've got over-the-counter Tylenols, higher dosages of that, and then they move into opioids, and that's it, really. There's no bridge.
Yeah.
So,
well, medical cannabis definitely gives us so many more options now for this, and I think that's one of the reasons why I'm such an advocate for it. I've seen the impact it's had on residents, and I've seen
move
the
into
impact it's had
opioids,
on
and
the
that's
family
it,
members
really.
who can now have some measure of comfort themselves and seeing their loved one, suffering and maybe not understanding why. There can't be too much education about this link between agitation, restlessness, that we associate with dementia and pain.
Right.
It is a sign of illness. It is not normal to be agitated. Just because you have Alzheimer's or you have vascular dementia, it is not normal to be agitated. That is a sign of illness. And we need to get the medical professionals involved and treat each case uniquely. Now, opioids can have a psychoactive impact on elders, especially. And I think sometimes, I'm not a doctor, I work with doctors, report to them, follow their orders, but I have observed residents who have hallucinations and increased confusion associated with opioids to treat pain. And so then now you have to solve the puzzle of, okay, how do we help a resident who has severe pain? Opioid options are not going to be good for this person because of the side effects. And medical cannabis is as an option that we have to us now.
We've heard that the reduction of the psychotropics and other pain medications is definitely a result of using cannabis as sort of a floor and then they make all of the other things work better. Less is needed. Are you finding that to be the case in your settings?
Oh yes.
That's great.
Let's see. We have 4 cases of residents who were admitted on a psychotropic medication. The most common one is Seroquel or quetiapine.
Very familiar.
Yeah. And it can be very, very effective in some cases where there aren't a lot of other options. I've seen an improvement in quality of life with some residents who that's been the medication that was effective for them. But often it can be very sedating. And that poses all kinds of problems for our population. If it has a sedating effect, now you have someone who is taking in fewer liquids, they're eating less, they're sleeping more, they're a higher risk for falling. And so we had a goal of reducing the number of residents who were coming into us on quetiapine or Seroquel, and working with Dr. Hergen rather to reduce the psychotropic medication and introduce medical cannabis. And we did that very effectively with about a third of our population.
Oh, that's exciting. That's awesome.
That's great.
There's a lot of pressure in our field to find alternatives to psychotropic medication.
Exactly.
And yet if we don't address agitation, we can have a lot of other really serious issues, as in, safety of that resident who's agitated, safety of other residents that would be affected by a resident who has agitation. So identifying the underlying cause of that agitation is really important, and what the role that the caregivers play in reporting. The more we can report detailed information to their primary care doctor and to a medical cannabis physician, the better the outcome will be. And so that if we can train caregivers to be very observant about underlying triggers or underlying issues to that agitation, we can identify perhaps what the best approach is going to be.
Which is part of a lot of what you do, is you train other caregivers and other facilities on how to implement these positive approaches to care, and also set up cannabis programs, because you are aware of what the state requires, and you do help other facilities set up these programs for cannabis.
Well, what I've done is I've done training with administrators with assisted living education in the past. I haven't had time this past year with everything that's going on.
Sure.
But I have reached out to thousands of administrators who have attended their conferences, and we have talked about medical cannabis in the field in the last few years especially. I think we're seeing more administrators becoming interested in this option and wanting to learn. The more studies we have, clinical trials that we have, that administrators, doctors, nurses can turn to, the better for our residents. We need that credibility, and so I really hope that we see more research papers coming out.
Well, the way to get research papers coming out is to be able to study it. And
Yes.
It's hard to study because cannabis is still on the Schedule 1 of drugs, and there's this big stigma about it. So,
Yeah.
hey, I know you are a oral historian, and I was wondering if you might want to wade into a little bit of the history of cannabis prohibition and how cannabis prohibition is related to structural racism, and how maybe that is related to how disproportionately people of color and women experience dementia, and how cannabis can help.
Wow, that is such a great question.
Just a little bit.
As we wrap up here, in a couple minutes, just to
thing at the
you can
end.
answer this big structural problem of our day.
Well, when I think of institutional racism and what our country is facing today, I, of course, am just so deeply saddened by the suffering that institutional racism causes. And therefore the need for a movement and a need for people to come together and listen to people who have experienced racism and try to understand what that experience is like, how it's impacted their lives and communities. And I think in really listening and understanding how racism impacts their lives, I would draw an analogy there to dementia and cannabis use, that we set our bias aside and generalizations perhaps that we make about medical cannabis or cannabis, set aside prejudgments and preconceived notions and listen to what is being experienced in the field. Unfortunately, because there isn't a cure for Alzheimer's and vascular dementia as well, there are some treatments that can help with vascular dementia. We are all facing either having a loved one that we will be caring for with the disease, or that we will have it ourselves. And so I think we really do need to listen now to what people are experiencing living with Alzheimer's without a cure. How do we understand the suffering? How do we understand how to help reduce the suffering? And just like with racism, we need to expose bias and set it aside, because it's going to only get in the way and be an obstacle to understanding, which is what we're really trying to seek here, is a better understanding.
Yeah.
Well put. Well connected.
Yeah, we are.
Absolutely.
Yeah, cannabis became the bugaboo that it is over racism. You know, it's it ended up on that Schedule 1 of drugs because of Nixon's racist ideas.
Stopping a whole trend in medicine and studying, and really just put the brakes on trying to find alternatives through plant medicine, many other, not just cannabis, but yeah. So I think you're right. I think having the suffering of people expressing themselves in the streets under police brutality, which is connected to, many arrests, vast majority of the arrests are from cannabis to this day, even in legal states. And ending the drug war is, I think, will benefit not only people who are suffering from under the thumb of police and oppression, but also people living with dementia, because the studies can be done and we can really get medicine to people, as opposed to just making it, everything's great now because it's adult use and recreational. And, it was certainly impacted. It's great that California is regulating, and now we can have standardized dosing available more effectively to folks. And before, it was us, we were a bottle of olive oil infused with cannabis, had no idea really how much was in there. That's what we were working with. And now it has certainly dramatically changed over the last 10 years, certainly since 2018. Those gummies are much easier. But the stigma remains. The education is still required for doctors, for patients, for facilities, for care homes. And it's really great that you are on basically the leading edge of this in Santa Rosa, Northern California, where much of this medicine is being implemented. And there are so few places that do this. We talked to Primrose, and they say he could count on one hand just in that area where this has been implemented. And of course, I think you're in that list. Yeah. How does someone find a place that embraces this medicine? And how do they contact you?
That's a really good question. There isn't a way for family members to choose a facility that works with medical cannabis unless they ask. And I think we have a long way to go there. I think there are people who are progressive out there because we want to make a difference, because we want to relieve suffering. But I think that across the country, it will be difficult for family members to access facilities that are working with medical cannabis. If they themselves can become informed and work with a medical cannabis physician and be an advocate, as you were for your mom, I think right now that's the best approach. And I think residents have the right to be free from pain, to be free from suffering. And they have a right to access a legal medication. The stigma, maybe the younger generation probably is not going to have such a stigma. They're going to be shaking their heads like, yeah, of course I know.
Yeah, where's my cannabis?
Yeah, of course this is going to help. In terms of being in compliance with regulations, thankfully in California, we have clear guidelines, and which is helpful. I don't know what the status is in other states. There are still barriers to this, many barriers to the use of this, and that we're going to need to overcome. And I think those clinical studies will be a big part of helping us get there.
Yep.
I look forward to reading them and following them if if they're able to achieve what we need them to and get the funding that they need. I don't know what the status is on the funding. I know it's always an issue.
Sure.
And of course, if with understanding aging and the needs of people in the field of aging, the focus has been on cardiology, and we've come a long way. And if you look at the history of how we understand how the heart works and how long it took for physicians to understand the workings of the heart, and that you could do angioplasty, for example. Those physicians were sort of heretics. They were considered to be not just progressive, but there were a lot of naysayers, let's say, early on, for those who wanted to make breakthroughs on what now is just standard procedures.
Yeah, if you don't have one of those in your, if you don't have a cath lab in your ER, you ain't nothing.
Yeah, so it's standard procedure now. But back when they were trying to break through the barriers to what is now common heart surgery,
standard procedure,
or angioplasty or standard procedure. So hopefully we'll see that in the field of medical cannabis and neurology, because it's the study of what's going on with brain change and how THC impacts brain chemistry, and how THC or CBD work with on a cellular level, I guess. And we're going to need some breakthroughs, and there are going to be naysayers. There are going to be those who say, that's crazy. Don't listen to that person. That's not approved. That's not an approved
Even
medication.
just with food. Phil Bredesen gets all kinds of problems.
Yeah.
Well, that's another area that your traditional doctors don't get a lot of training in anyway. 2 hours of nutrition, so food always hasn't been big on their list on how to affect change in conditions. So, 20 years, as Teepa said, it takes 20 years for the medical profession to implement a new technology or a new idea.
Yeah,
and Ethan Russo and Grobe and Hergenrather all say that this is a bottom-up movement, that the patients and the caregivers are the ones informing the medical establishment that this works. And we need to do something to help these people, and this works and has never killed anybody. So let's get it on.
Yeah. The need for medical cannabis and dementia is going to grow tremendously. And even just in the next 10 years, we're going to see exponential growth of people living with dementia.
Absolutely.
And I think that, we need to speak the truth and understand, what impact this is going to have on families. And I see it firsthand every day. So, the last trials that were done by major drug companies for Alzheimer's medications, both the largest trials failed, and back to square one for Alzheimer's. And so it's disheartening.
Yeah.
We're
looking forward to the King's College London study of Sativex that should be getting underway this year, but I'm not sure now.
Well, it depends. Well, with the way the things are with COVID, is that you're saying, and everything that's going on in the world. I mean, I'm sure everything in medicine is sort of taken a back burner. I know my sister is a nurse in Colorado, and they are they're losing money. All of the hospitals for the last 3 months have done nothing but COVID, and it's definitely affecting their bottom line. So we need something new in the pipeline. We need some new tools. And everybody we've talked to seems to agree that cannabis is a tool. It's going to be a polypharma world, and we might as well have a nice, natural, relatively harmless tool in that toolkit that can supplement to save money, to get people off of the toxic drugs. So many positive ways you can approach this in talking to people, especially medical professionals and places like, we are looking to reduce suffering and decrease costs. Because, and we're with such low doses, I don't know, are you finding that very low dosing is effective in your setting? Because that's what we're hearing, is that super low dosing can be very effective, which makes it much more cost, effective.
Yeah, I think, we're looking at 5 milligrams, which is very low, and with very good effect on pain reduction, or anxiety, or helping with sleep at night. And we're not seeing negative side effects.
Right.
5 milligrams of 1-to-1 or a THC or a CBD? What do you generally end up using at your facility, or doctors recommend at your facility?
What's been recommended is whole plant whenever possible, like a tincture. That's a whole plant tincture. That is a 1-to-1 or a 2-to-1. But it's interesting. There's a 20-to-1 CBD to THC tincture that has been very, very effective. So you think that's a very, very low dose of THC, and very effective for sleep, and for anxiety.
Amazing. Yeah, we really do need more studies. It'd be great to know exactly what's what. But for now, we can use what's available and ease suffering for some people.
Yeah. I so appreciate what you're doing, and I wish you luck with your podcast, and I hope this was helpful, and if I
so helpful.
help
This is
other
the least we can do. Where do people find where can they find you to get help, maybe making programs of their own in their own facilities?
Or where, are you accepting more residents at this time? And how do people find your wonderful places up there in Petaluma?
Oh, thank you. You can find us on Facebook under Creekside Cottage, Petaluma. And you can find me on LinkedIn, Kelly Sturgeon. I'm not real active on social media. I don't have a lot of time, but
no,
not a lot of time. Yeah.
But people can, people can reach me via LinkedIn is probably the best way. If an administrator or a caregiver is out there,
great.
They can reach me that way. I'd be happy to point them in a helpful direction if this is something they'd like to start.
Because we really need more. We need more places like you're creating, and the space to in so many ways, with a positive approach to care, the organic foods, and
incorporating Bredeson's protocols. There's nothing like what you have in Southern California.
Nothing at all.
Nothing like
not even close.
Primrose in Southern California. There's no Dr. Hergenrather or Grobe in Southern California. It's really you have a very special situation up there.
You do.
It's thank you so much for saying that. It's I think that it's very rewarding work, because we can truly make a difference. It depends on how empowered a team of caregivers is. If you want to be progressive, you need to empower your caregivers, and that's a whole nother podcast topic, because caregivers tend to be overworked and underpaid. I know that's sort of a cliche.
Well, you mentioned underpaid and overworked and underpaid, and where are we seeing this COVID problem? Is a lot of care facilities that are
way
overworked, and their folks are going out and bringing things in, and this seemed to be a trend. But it's
my mom's facility where she died was a major outbreak with multiple deaths and staff all infected.
It breaks my heart. It breaks my heart, because what caregivers need is they need the tools, the training, and the support. And if what we want is good care for loved ones living with this disease, and when the disease progresses, it takes a village to care for someone with Alzheimer's. You can start out with your family members who work so hard to care for their loved one. And as the disease progresses, often you need to grow that village. And and that means bringing in professional caregivers, or placing in an assisted living memory care facility. And so if caregivers are supported and they're cared for, residents will be too. We can't ignore the needs of our caregivers in terms of the supplies that they need, the training that they need, and the support that they need that is ongoing. And it's challenging. There has been a caregiver shortage. There's been a caregiver shortage in California, and I don't know about other states. That has been going on for the last 5 years, 6 years. So and now with COVID-19, people are very reluctant to apply for these positions.
It's hard work.
So it's very hard work. It's very
not
rewarding.
well paid.
There's a huge need, I think, to focus on caregivers and what caregivers need in terms of pay, of
living
access
wage to start with.
Of access to health care. And it's become very expensive for operators, for us. We've seen our expenses go way up. And of course, now with COVID, groceries are more expensive. Everything's more expensive.
Right.
The core of what we do in memory care and dementia care, the core is our caregiving team. And, back to when we talked about listening, really listening to the needs of people living with this disease. I think we need to listen to the caregivers who are doing this very difficult work.
Who are also often Black and brown.
Yes.
Yep.
Absolutely. And so in terms of empowerment of caregivers through a living wage, through access to healthcare, I think that's an underlying issue that goes to the core of what we do.
Well, there's a lot of priorities.
Medicare for all would change a lot of things.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yes. I mean, people have asked me,
living wage. Stuff.
I've been asked, why are you for, national health care? You're a business owner, why aren't you more conservative, on that issue? And it's a very easy answer, because I see the impact firsthand with my caregivers and with their needs to have access to healthcare. And, after National Healthcare Reform Act, they started qualifying for premium assistance. And we saw more caregivers get access, to healthcare. As a small business, it is prohibitively expensive for us to carry healthcare. We wish that we could. It would be one of the first things that we would do if we could. But paying a living wage is really where our values are at and where we focus. And really
where they should be. That's the businesses should be paying their people properly, and the healthcare should be not something
Medicare
that people shouldn't worry about. Unions shouldn't have to worry about negotiating for healthcare. They should be negotiating for wages. And healthcare should just be not something that we have to worry about, just like every other other society that's functioning properly.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think our average hourly rate is $19 an hour, and we're heading toward $20 an hour. And so, when I hear that caregivers are still making minimum wage, it's how can we sustain that? Really, is that sustainable? Because there's going to only be more of a demand for people who have that head-heart connection as good caregivers, and that is a skill that is very valuable, and we need to value those skills more in our society. And so it's an opportunity for us to become to kind of awaken to to the needs of caregiving as a country. And if they're right on what they predict in terms of dementia and the number of people in our country who will be living with it, we will need to be a nation of caregivers.
Yep. The Alzheimer's tsunami will not stop. Yeah, no, this has been super informative from such an amazing facilitator of a home care system that really is where we need to be, where this country needs to be. We need to refocus as opposed to institutionalizing our loved ones that we can't take care of at home because we are so busy and working. Everybody's got to work. The kids got to work. The dog's got to work. Who's going to take care of mom? So we need places like you're creating, and with working with doctors like Dr. Hergenrather, who we've interviewed, and Dr. Grobe.
Antipa
Snow, everyone.
And Dale Bredesen.
Yes.
I mean, you're everything I want to be.
Exactly. My sister said, I want to be at Primrose. I think she's going to want to be at your places next. I mean, my sister is a traditional nurse in Colorado. Very excited that I talk about her on the podcast now. But she listens regularly and she is learning so much. And I think the more and more these traditional medical professionals hear the real stories of clinicians and people, administrators that are putting these practices into use in the legal states, their eyes open up and they start to see, wow, this is something we should look at. So I want to thank you for what you're doing up there in Petaluma and for educating and for joining us on Cannabis Helps Dementia and helping us spread the word. And that's really what we found we needed to do after our 10-year journey was educate people on how this can help and be a tool to help our loved ones and our caregivers, because our caregivers could use a little CBD and maybe a little THC too occasionally, because anxiety and stress is a big killer right now. Chela, anything else you'd like to say?
Just thank you so much for being with us, really, and for all you do for people living with dementia.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Chela. It's my pleasure.
Awesome. Kelly Sturgeon, thank you. Thank you very much. Keep up the great work.
You too.
Thanks for joining us for Cannabis Helps Dementia. Be sure to download and like us on Spotify, iTunes, or your favorite podcasting network.
And please share this podcast with anyone you know in relationship with dementia.
Do you want to tell your story of how cannabis helps dementia? Visit Anchor FM/Cannabis Helps Dementia to leave us a voice message or drop us a note and connect with us on the socials.
Check out the Society of Cannabis Clinicians website to find real medical professionals familiar with cannabis medicine in your area.
Because you remember, we're not doctors.
Just family caregivers turned advocates.
And don't forget, download, like, and share what you learn. Cannabis Helps Dementia.
Why don't you get wise? Get up and get out. Get rid of that frown that's been dragging you down and get up in the air. Just pretend that you can fly. You'll never know if you can till you try. So get out of your rut. Be able and strong. Give vent to that intent you've had pent up for so long. Come on up and see what it's like being out where you're free. Just do something that's real unique. Do something that's new.
So that was the latest episode, dropped Friday morning. Go listen to it over on Anchor FM or your favorite podcast network, whatever that may be. I bet you it's up there already. Mm-hmm. And of course, that featured Kelly Sturgeon, the owner, operator, administrator of Creekside Cottage and Creekside Place at Creekside Petaluma on Facebook and LinkedIn, Kelly Sturgeon. If you want to learn how to turn your residential care facility into cannabis friendly in California, she might be able to give you a tip or two. So that was great. Great episode. Really, they just get better and better. I mean, the earlier ones are great, but I mean, it seems like every episode is highly beneficial and informative. And
yeah, we're working on one for next week that is also really awesome. Next week, Friday, we're going to be talking with, you're going to hear, Stephen Barbieri, who is living with CTE dementia, chronic traumatic encephalopathy. He was diagnosed about 9 years ago, and he is amazing. He attributes exercise to his longevity, but cannabis for saving the marriage.
True story.
So, yeah, cannabis was by far the best medicine that helps stabilize the moods that come with dementia. So it was really, really helpful, and I hope that you'll enjoy that too.
40, close to 4 decades in Taekwondo, master, traveling the world, the kickmaster. Found out he was eventually diagnosed correctly with CTE, and cannabis definitely helped. And we're gonna. It's another really great interview. So we thank Kelly Sturgeon for this week's episode, and thank in advance to Stephen and Tracy for the upcoming episode on Friday. We have more. Chela is booking more and more great guests in the future, so we're going to try to get some in the bag before we go on the road.
Yeah.
And boy, I'm super excited to get up and visit with Jilly Love.
Yes.
It's sounding like such. I can fart on your plants if you need me to. I'm just saying.
Especially if you feed him greens.
I'm saying, if that's something that we can help with, I can certainly work that out. So I'd have to get off my vegan diet before, or I guess, what is it, greens?
No, greens
you say
make you
greens
fart.
make me fart? Oh, well, that's greens do terrible things to me, I guess.
Make you fart.
So go check out Cannabis Helps Dementia on your favorite podcast server. Or visit anchor.fm/Cannabis Helps Dementia. You can support the show there. You can
silly portion of the
listen.
show, guys.
We've moved into the silly portion of the show as we have consumed.
We talk about farts in the silly portion of the show. That's post-podcast.
Post-podcast.
Yeah.
And now which means we're going to move into the news roll-up as we finish the show.
Yes.
We're going to roll up some news and smoke it as we get out of here. Here's a quick headline from Marijuana Moment. Bipartisan lawmakers push marijuana reform in floor debate on policing overhaul bill. They're talking a good game. Let's hear what one or two of them have to say.
Step for racial justice. I hope our approval will soften the hearts in the Senate because there is much to do. I'm honored to work with another champion for justice, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, whose Marijuana Justice Act would be the next step, repealing Nixon's blatantly racist prohibition of marijuana with its selective enforcement against young black men, which continues to ensnare tens of thousands of young black men every month for something that Americans think should be legal. Let's approve the MORE Act, already passed out of the Judiciary Committee, the next critical step in racial justice reform and protecting young black men.
Representative Earl Blumenauer on the floor. And here's an unlikely, well, I wouldn't say unlikely, but someone you don't normally hear from, Representative Kelly Armstrong.
Risk of alienating the people who are most closely and most want reform. And I'll end on something that I think is fairly hopeful. And I do have hope, because I think this is the most criminally justice reform Congress we have ever seen. There are members on both sides of the aisle that are serious about marijuana legislation. And if you want to talk about a system in the criminal code that has a disparate racial impact, I'm not sure you need to go a whole lot farther than marijuana reform. We've had people on both sides.
Republican out of North Dakota, Representative Kelly Armstrong on the floor talking about marijuana and the end of the war on drugs. So white men in Congress talking about ending the war on drugs. That's always good news, and pretty much the only way it's going to change. Also from Marijuana Moment, military invests $27 million to develop a new class of psychedelic-inspired drugs, Chela.
I'm so glad.
There's a
psychedelic
hook.
drugs.
There's a hook.
Yes?
It doesn't cause psychedelia. It's a hallucinogenic-free class of psychedelics.
What?
Yeah, they're going to create a psychedelic drug that doesn't make you hallucinate or create any psychedelic.
Psychedelic.
It's a psychedelic-inspired drug. Psychedelic-inspired. It means you're not going to see any visions, man. So I don't know what it means.
Gives you the medical benefits
without the hallucinations, without the cool visuals.
You know, that might be really good for some people, like some people who have
like CBD.
PTSD.
doesn't get you high.
Right. No,
Right.
it might be good for some people. It might be good for some things. Okay.
Well,
listen, I say try stuff.
No experimenting is bad.
No experimenting is bad, but cannabis helps dementia. Cannabis helps lots of things. Deschedule the shit out of that.
Yeah.
So we can try stuff too.
And let's deschedule psilocybin as well while we're at it.
And we got to decriminalize all drugs.
Yeah,
You
to get it
guys,
all off. Just eliminate the DEA.
we can't be all elitist about cannabis. We have to decriminalize all drugs and deschedule cannabis for sure. I don't know about descheduling other drugs. I can be open to it for sure.
Well,
But,
certainly psilocybin, LSD,
plants. Deschedule plants.
psilocybin, LSD came
How
from
about
yeast. And heroin, but heroin's on Schedule 1 and it's really been studied, as Dr. Shari Rafai told us a week before on Cannabis Helps Dementia.
Yes, and as Stephen told us on next week's episode of Cannabis Helps Dementia,
That's right.
hallucinating when you have dementia can be really, really terrifying and not something you want.
And he gives us a great description of
So good.
of that, and that because we talked about that. It's going to be another great episode.
It's really, you guys, this
Project-
has been such a good time.
I know. Project CBD, Meet the Medicinal Mushrooms, covering writing with an excerpt from the book The Rebel's Apothecary, a practical guide to healing magic of cannabis, CBD, and mushrooms. And great little article over there. I just ordered the book, Chela, Rebel's Apothecary. I'm like, ooh, we need that one to move with us. If we go somewhere.
Absolutely, yes, we need that one.
Because I am getting into amateur mycology, if you will.
Yes.
Good news in the drug
You're
war.
beginning your education
I
as a
am.
mycologist.
That's right. And what better? Yeah, that's exactly right. I got grain spawn with oyster
believe in you,
mushrooms ready
baby.
to go.
I believe in you.
Ready to rock. We have victories in the drug war. Meanwhile, in talking police reform, we're pushing it. It's happening. Seattle repeals drug loitering law that led to racist harassment and arrests. This is, of course, the number one reason people are arrested. Makes no sense. I mean, of course, it makes sense for them, but really, it's the easiest thing to do to end the racial disparity on the streets. You want to get rid of a massive, massive, massive problem with racial disparity on the policing and the drug war. And the
it's
drug
a start.
war.
It's a start. It's a concrete step. It's something that city councils can do.
That's right.
They can decriminalize all drugs. They can do that. That can be done.
Another thing city councils can do, like the entirely corrupt, and they just caught one of the good ones. That's all. The ones that are really corrupt are easier at covering it up. I refer to Huizar, of course, with that scandal. But
Terrible.
listen, when the LA City Council somehow in their wisdom was able to divert $12 million from their cannabis social equity program in Los Angeles to pay for overtime on Los Angeles PD.
Ridiculous.
Arresting people for cannabis and taking down unlicensed cannabis stores. But they did decide to make some reform this week for the cannabis laws in Los Angeles. So let's see what that's going to work out to. In Marijuana Business Daily, Los Angeles City Council backs major changes to marijuana licensing and social equity. So let's see what these major changes are, just briefly. I will scroll down. Ranging from minor tweaks to major changes. They're talking about, as I found here, let me see. Oh, okay. I think the major thing that popped out, I don't see the quote here, but essentially, I thought it was in this article. Maybe it was in a different article. But essentially, what I read, the change that stuck out to me was that currently in Los Angeles, the state of Los Angeles, we only have 187 licensed dispensaries. And that's ridiculous for the biggest cannabis consumer
say that word.
in the
really
world. You got under 200 dispensaries to feed 10 million cannabis. How many people? 50% of the population uses cannabis, right? That's to be honest. Yeah. So you're talking 5 million cannabis users in LA County and 187 legal shops in the city of Los Angeles is nonsense.
Absolute nonsense.
So they've expanded. That's what one of the things is going to do. It's going to expand the number of licensed stores to 587, I think it is. And all of them will be social equity. Every license, every new cannabis license that's going to be issued in the city of Los Angeles will be a social equity cannabis license. So that was like the major change that stuck out for me. Kudos to them. Now stop spending the social equity money on police overtime. I don't know if they did that again, but don't do it again. Defund the police. End the war on drugs. But if this is an attempt to allow more stores to get legal that weren't legal before, they also will allow transfer. They also will allow you can move your shop, which was prohibited before. So there are some good and major changes happening to the city of Los Angeles. Let's hope it does benefit the social equity applicants and keeps that moving forward. So a new reboot in LA City licensing. Meanwhile, poor John Boehner, who's all in on cannabis, Acreage Holdings not doing so well.
Listen, all the shitheads who were shitty about cannabis deserve to go down. MedMen,
True
this
story.
guy,
True
fuck
story.
these people.
So far, karmically, there's been some benefit.
Stuff.
Unfortunately, many black-owned cannabis businesses were affected during the uprisings. But collateral damage, I guess.
Make it right.
It'll be fixed, and it was for the most part accepted. But meanwhile, in corporate cannabis, the largest corporate cannabis manufacturer, vertical. That's why they said the DOJ was, oh no, they're looking at these because they're vertical holdings. And, and if you know anything, a vertical structure for cannabis business is basically a drug cartel. That's what it is, where you control every aspect of the growing, manufacturing, distribution, and sales of the plant, of the product. That's called a drug cartel, aka a monopoly. So Acreage is one of the largest drug cartels in cannabis, trying to suck off of the legalization movement and destruction of medical cannabis. But they lost $172 million in the last quarter, I believe it was. And they have, following the company's heavily discounted deal with Canopy Growth, another struggling one up in Canada, and the departure of co-founder and CEO Kevin Murphy, reported 2020 reported revenues of $24.2 million, an increase of 88% compared to the same period in 2019, and a 15% sequential increase. The earnings were unaudited. The revenue that was reported paled in comparison to the company's charges, which were almost double what Acreage had told investors they could expect. So net profit, not so good for Acreage Holdings, and the monopolization of the corporatization and monopolization of cannabis on the backs, once again, on the backs of communities that built this plant, this medicine, this industry, and is now being literally taken advantage of by these corporations. Speaking of a corporation, GW Pharmaceuticals, Epidiolex now exempt from drug control requirements. June 24th, we thought this was, we knew it had been put on Schedule 5. I guess it is official. That Epidiolex is, I believe it's unscheduled now. That's what it is. It's no longer on Schedule 5. It has been removed from the schedule of drugs, and therefore it can be basically
used off-label.
Used off-label. That's right. What this move makes. This means anybody can use Epidiolex for apparently the right price point for the type of product that it is.
So,
in the grand scheme of pharma.
If one is prescribed Depakote for seizures, like they do for people living with dementia who get Depakote to try to address their behavioral issues, perhaps one might ask one's neurologist if they could get Epidiolex instead of Depakote. Because they do that all the time.
All the time.
So, I say we need to attack them by all means possible. So that means making shows like this one, bringing research to doctors, encouraging others to bring research to doctors, pushing that information out there, And okay, great. Epidiolex is descheduled. Go to your doctor. Tell them if you're on Depakote and you're living with dementia, talk to your doctor about potentially switching to Epidiolex instead, because you've read about CBD X, Y, and Z, and if they're on Depakote, an anti-seizure medication, and Epidiolex is also an anti-seizure medication, why not?
Why not? Why not?
Sorry, I had to interject.
It's okay. No, this is what this is all about. This is what they pay for, folks. This is what you pay for. You pay for the blunt commentary and
my big eyes.
And your big and Chela's big eyes.
My big eye rolling. I make big eyes when I get upset. I can tell because it's delayed like 15 seconds. So
I see.
Myself doing big eyes, and I am so Italian with my hand talking. You guys.
Well, speaking of that research everyone craves so much, we reported that Denver was going to award MedPharm a research license to study a specific product for Alzheimer's, and it has been approved. Yay! Denver awards MedPharm medical marijuana research and development license for Alzheimer's study. Company will launch a study with 30 participants to determine whether cannabis-based medicine improves patient symptoms. So that research has been approved. Excellent news. Also in Alzheimer's, we talk about this all the time. We talked about it on this week's podcast. Black people suffer disproportionately from dementia crisis. And, this is dementia care. Access to cannabis is a racial justice issue too. Just saying.
It really is.
Just saying.
And by the way, guys, I'm hoping to have all of the people involved in these stories we've just talked about on the podcast.
Yes, we are reaching out. There's some Swiss person that's involved.
Yeah. Dr. starts with a B. Boers. About the study from last week. We talked about it last week. Anyway.
We're reaching out. We're getting more scientists because, we're not experts.
We're not experts.
But we're certainly finding the experts for you. And actually, this is it. This is the study, babe. I think this is the one you were talking. Is this the one that was about the Austrian? Austrian?
Nope.
No, different
Geneva.
one. Oh, well, these are the Austrians.
Okay.
In Normal this week, June 25th. Yes, case report.
Them on also.
Yes, we will get the Austrians. Case report, oral THC effective in mitigating agitation due to Alzheimer's. The administration of oral THC is associated with symptom mitigation and reduced prescription drug use in a patient with severe Alzheimer's-induced dementia, according to a case report published in the Journal of Frontiers in Psychiatry. From this article, from the Normal article, a team of Austrian researchers reported on the use of a synthetic oral THC, dronabinol, in a female patient with severe Alzheimer's disease. Low-dose administration of dronabinol was associated with reduced aggression and anxiety, as well as an overall improvement in the patient's emotional state. The patient was also able to reduce her use of psychopharmacological drugs, got that one out, from a total of 6 medications to 3 over the course of cannabinoid treatment. Authors concluded, our report underpins the need for randomized controlled trials to explore the effect of cannabinoid receptor agonists on behavioral and psychological symptoms in patients in different stages of Alzheimer's disease. Cannabinoids have a distinct pharmacological profile that may offer an alternative pharmacological approach to antipsychotics and sedatives for treating neuropsychiatric symptoms in patients with AD. In addition, the beneficial effect on appetite and pain may significantly improve quality of life of Alzheimer's dementia patients and their caregivers. That in Frontiers in Psychiatry, cannabinoid as beneficial replacement therapy for psychotropics to treat neuropsychiatric symptoms in severe Alzheimer's dementia, a clinical case report. There's one of those studies everybody needs, but we need trials. We need trials. Like this one. Psychiatrist explores possible benefits of treating PTSD with ecstasy or cannabis. Look over there on NPR. Say it isn't so. Looking at Dr. Julie Holland's work in Bellevue at using PTSD with patients with PTSD using ecstasy, which of course is going to be regularly used soon, or cannabis, which more and more information and studies are coming out saying That is what is needed. A huge loss in cannabis community this week. Dr. Lester Greenspoon passed. One of the good ones, one of the good doctors, who for a long time argued that cannabis is medicine, the war on drugs is ridiculous, and we've lost a great cannabis warrior in the medical field this week, Dr. Lester Greenspoon. His son, of course, very active on Twitter, and we're so sorry for your loss, and keep up the fight. Keep up the fight. Normal putting out a remembrance. Longtime Harvard professor, psychiatrist, author of 12 books, including Marijuana Reconsidered and Marijuana, the Forbidden Medicine, passed away Thursday morning. He was 92. Author of over 180 scholarly articles, perhaps most well known for his work to advance awareness for the therapeutic utility of cannabis.
He was radical.
Yeah. He was bold.
He was fucking bold.
Yeah.
He was fucking bold. So, yeah. One of the good
great
ones
loss.
is right. But, you know, if he could go from where he started to where he went, that means others can as well.
That is true. So true.
You know, he wasn't always on the right side of things. But, you know, he got there. So
we're getting more and more of them, and it takes really shows like this, podcasts like Cannabis Helps Dementia, basically patients with a bottom up, you know, the bottom up movement, patients showing research like that about THC, like that about research we highlight every week here on Cannabis Saves the World. Subscribe, get notifications, share this broadcast, share this show. Our super chat is open. Thank you so much for all the super chats, because they're going to demonetize this as soon as it's over. Because they always do, but for those, hey,
we don't do it for the money.
That's true. We've never done it for the money.
We do it just for your
3
love.
years. We've done it to try to share the information. We do appreciate your support. We appreciate you sharing the show, following us, downloading the podcast, rate and review the podcast over on iTunes. That'll get the algorithm growing. I am Cannabis Sativa. Check out his podcast, another great podcast on cannabis. Great. Thank you for your support. Brian Arbor, thank you for your support today and your super chat. And thank you all for joining us today. Listen, it may all be a moot point, guys. Tomorrow, Lemon, June 29th, is at its closest point. The giant comet Lemon is supposedly, it isn't crossing our orbit yet. That happens on July 9th. So after
when we're going to be at Chili Loves.
Yeah, we're going to be up in Humboldt around the time that this comet will be viewable in the northern hemisphere if it hasn't hit the planet. So it will be at its closest point tomorrow, 123 million kilometers. So, you know, our problems may all be over tomorrow. Huge comet 2020. That's the one.
That's my vote. But it's lovely knowing you all.
It has been lovely knowing you all, and free the plant, free the people. That's all I got to say.
Indeed. Enjoy yourselves in the now, because you never know what's going to happen.
As William Shatner says, live life like you're going to die, because you're going to.
Yeah.
Yes. So thank you guys. Thanks for joining us this Sunday. If we're here next, the comet doesn't hit, we'll be here next week.
That's right.
With more information about our planned road trip.
Yep.
As well as another episode of Cannabis Helps Dementia featuring the Kickmaster, Stephen Barbieri, and his wife, Tracy, talking about how cannabis saved the marriage and how you can thrive living with dementia using cannabis medicine, as well as exercise, as well as lots of great exercise. So that's going to be a great episode. Great show, Chel. Thank you so much for an awesome show. Thank you guys in the chat.
Thanks,
great
everybody.
Chat this week. Very engaging. I will fart on your plants. It will happen.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
Love you guys. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Murderers keep murdering. The churches keep a-burning, the rapists keep a-raping, and the tide ain't turning. Uncle Sam, for all your power, things get worse every hour. It seems to me your energies are wasted, chasing my friends and me. So, hey, Uncle Sam, hey there, Uncle Sam, leave us pot smokers alone. Uncle Sam, leave us pot smokers alone. The terrorists keep terrorizing, our leaders keep a-lying, the haters keep a-hating, and the planet's dying. Uncle Sam, do what's proper, call off your dogs and your helicopters. The problems of society were not caused by my friends and me. So hey, Uncle Sam, hey there, Uncle Sam, leave us pot smokers alone. Uncle Sam, leave us pot smokers alone. How many innocent people gonna be imprisoned? We just peace and love and street pop and brotherhood freaks. A touch of Mother Nature never made nobody violent, never made nobody hate, nobody will break nobody's peace. Since we've never been told to be harmful, don't you tell me no lies with your caffeine, codeine, nicotine eyes. The cannabis ban is just recent, just since 1938 to re-legalize it, realize it. You made a big mistake. Hey, Uncle Sam, hey there, Uncle Sam, leave us pot smokers alone. Uncle Sam, leave us pot smokers alone. Uncle Sam, leave us pot smokers alone. Leave us pot smokers alone. Uncle Sam, understand I love you, but leave me alone. Smokers alone. Leave us pot smokers alone. Our leaders keep a-lying. Leave us pot smokers alone. Terrorists keep terrorizing.
You can argue the pluses and minuses of marijuana, but marijuana ain't heroin. So we have to end that, and that's what I will do. As President of the United States, I believe we can do that through executive order, and I will do that.
Smoke weed every day.